Ah, the bike night, one of the most sacred rituals among riders. A weekly gathering, usually at a local watering hole where you can chew the fat with a rotating group of folks. In the before times, this was a staple of my social calendar. I did everything I could not to miss it because these weekly hangouts were where I met some of my closest friends in Texas, and they're also where I learned some of my more esoteric pearls of wisdom. Like that a controlled stupid is better than an uncontrolled one. But in my experience, there's a handful of usual suspects you can find at your local bike nights, whether you're in Milwaukee or Mumbai. Not that I've actually been to Mumbai, but you know what I'm talking about. It's almost as though motorcyclists around the world really aren't all that different. If you've never been to a bike night before, they can be a little intimidating for first-timers since it seems like everyone else has been there forever and knows each other not only by name, but can tell at a glance who's there just by looking at the bikes parked out front. Don't worry though, I've curated a list of the 7 usual suspects you can expect to find at any bike night to help you get through those first awkward few meetups. The folks that I'm going to talk about are largely based on actual people that I've encountered at real-life bike nights, so you know I'm not just making all this stuff up. Once we're in the after times, I'm sure you'll be able to go out to your local bike night and find some of these folks for yourself, but until then, I guess this list will have to do. Don't worry though, the cheap beer and fried food will still be there. Before we dive in though, we need to take a second and talk about a subject near and dear to my heart, and that's bike theft. Basically, every day I see people posting APBs on motorcycles that have been stolen from apartment buildings, home garages, or right off the street. I can tell you from personal experience that nothing sucks worse than going out to your parking spot and realizing your bike's not where you left it. If you saw my list on motorcycle security, you know that I advocate that every motorcycle should have a tracker in it. And now with Monimoto, that's never been easier. These things are small enough to hide on just about any motorcycle. They don't require any electrical connections, which means it's not going to drain your battery, and it can easily be moved from bike to bike. It's got 2 one-time use batteries in it that last up to a year, and the setup is a breeze through their app. If someone does manage to steal your bike, you'll be able to track it down and share the thief's route with the cops. If you click the link down below and use the code Yammie7, you'll get 7% off your order. Trust me, it's only a matter of time before someone makes a pass at your bike, so pick up a tracker today just for the peace of mind alone. The first guy you're going to encounter at any bike night is the car guy. Yep, you heard me right. Every bike night has one. Sure, he might show up on a motorcycle. He might even go out on your group rides, but his first and only passion is for cars. Who knows why he even bothered with a motorcycle in the first place? Maybe he needed a cheap way to get around, or maybe he's still in denial about how bikes are better than cars in literally every single way. He usually doesn't talk about his bike too much, mostly because he's the exact opposite of a normal rider. He uses the bike to get around so he doesn't put too many miles on his pride and joy, which is usually some weird wagon or a sleeper sedan that he's dumped the equivalent of a year's worth of mortgage payments into. God help you if you engage this guy in a conversation about cars, because you're going to be smiling and nodding your way through the next 40 minutes, desperately hoping that the bartender will come by and give you an out. The best thing you can do when cornered by the car guy is point him in some other direction. Say that guy over there has a pretty sweet car, and then inflict yourself on someone else's conversation to appear busy. The next person you'll see at bike night is the dude whose bike never works. You can never be 100% sure that this guy actually knows how to ride a motorcycle because you'll never see his bike out front in the lineup, but he'll be sure to tell you all about his next project or set of parts that he's ordering. He'll always end up driving because for this guy, there's no greater humiliation in life than hitching a ride on someone else's pillion. But even though he drives, he'll always show up in a motorcycle jacket just in case you thought he really didn't have a bike. When you talk to this person, you'll slowly find yourself lost in a maze of technobabble jargon, and you'll never be sure exactly what you're talking about anymore. Somehow you started talking about how he needed to rejet his carburetors, but then you blinked and got another drink and suddenly you're replacing the entire cam chain. The obvious question you'll ask is, why don't you just buy another motorcycle? You know, one that works. To which he'll shrug and say that he just likes a challenge. That's usually a telltale sign that you've got someone there with severe Stockholm syndrome, and the only thing that'll save him from his waking hell is if you snuck into his garage one night, stole his bike, and dumped it in a quarry never to be seen again. Once in a blue moon, you'll see the bike in the flesh, and on those nights, he'll be fishing for compliments and beaming like a kid who just won the spelling bee. Don't worry though, he'll only be insufferable for one night, because next week the bike will be back on the lift and the universe will be balanced once more. Number 3 on the list is the know-it-all. This guy will have something to say about any conversation, regardless of whether you're talking about cruisers, super sports, moon pies, or the meaning of life. Chances are that he's been secretly eavesdropping on your conversation all night long, just waiting waiting for the smallest mistake to pounce on. Maybe you misquoted the power figure on your motorcycle, but don't worry, the know-it-all will come to the rescue with an unsolicited tome of knowledge to bludgeon you over the head with. This guy means well, but oftentimes he can't read a room. You'll be talking about some weird or obscure motorcycle and he'll interject with a laundry list of reasons why that bike sucks or is great and the mods that you should do to it and the maintenance intervals and the common problems. He'll basically shout an entire "so you want a blank bike" video script at you out of nowhere. But again, the know-it-all means well. He genuinely wants to add to the conversation, but turns it into a one-sided deluge of information. For the love of God, don't get him started on his own bike. You'll end up listening to him going on and on about it until the sun burns out. Trust me, as a reformed know-it-all myself, there's nothing more boring than hearing all the minute details of a motorcycle you don't even ride. Just buy this dude a beer and excuse yourself. Number 4 is the Old Salt. They're a staple at all bike nights, and no matter where you go, you can expect to see this guy sitting at the end of the table listening and watching. Now, this guy has some stories, but getting him to tell them all is like trying to crack a coconut by karate chopping it. You see, with age comes wisdom, and this guy has seen more miles than you can ever dream of because back in his day, you only had to work 3 hours a week and everything cost a nickel. He's seen track days, long-distance tours, knows all the best roads around town like the back of his hand, but he only divulges his dragon's hoard of knowledge to those he deems worthy. If it's your first time and you try to chat him up, you're probably only going to get one-word answers out of him because he's sizing you up, trying to determine if you're going to stay with the group or if you're just passing through. The best way to get this guy to start talking is to ask him about his bike, but don't just walk up and ask him what he's riding. No, that's too obvious. Instead, you need to carefully watch him for a week or two. See what bike he rides in on. Maybe ask the know-it-all. But the Old Salt's a motorcyclist at heart. Once you ask him about his bike, you're in. He'll talk about all the mechanics he knows who cut him deals on repairs, the best roads around town, and where the cops like to hang out. Anything you can think of, this guy knows about it. The more times you show up, the more you'll be able to learn until suddenly the years go by and you're an Old Salt too, for there can only be one. Number 5, the girl. There's usually 1 or 2 women at every bike night, and they're usually on the fastest super sport in the lot, some painstakingly customized cruiser, or something really strange like a Ural or an old Tomos scooter majig. They'll pull up and the regulars will greet her like a normal person, and the new people will fawn over her all night long. If you're new to the group, do not, and I repeat, do not glom onto her like she's the last unicorn on Earth. It's desperate and pathetic, and literally everyone is going to be judging you, because no, you're not subtle or smooth. On the scale of Curly from the Three Stooges to Casanova, you're probably right somewhere around Adam Sandler. Just talk to her like a normal person. Ask her about her bike, make small talk, and when the conversation ends, don't linger like a fart in an elevator. Just move on. Number 6, the guy with 1,000,000 bikes. This dude will show up to a bike night each week on a different motorcycle, usually one that he picked up earlier that week, and then by next week he's already flipped it for something else. You'll never hear this guy talk about how he makes enough money to bankroll this purchasing addiction. Instead, you'll be left guessing. Does he have oil money? Is he selling his bathwater online? Did he trick some aging billionaire out of their fortune in some elaborate Ocean's 11-esque Hollywood long con? The mystery will never be solved, but what you do know is that the bikes never really look all that great. Sometimes it's a sport bike from the mid-2000s, or maybe it's a cruiser that the previous owner tried to turn into a bobber, or maybe he's rocking a Ninja 400 this week. Why doesn't he just spend all that money on one really nice bike, like, oh, I don't know, maybe a KTM 690 SMCR? That motorcycle would probably make him a lot happier than an endless parade of Craigslist crap bikes. Now, of course I'm not biased to KTM. Whatever would make you think that? The guy whose bike never works will always be close to the million bikes dude when he shows up asking for advice or spare parts. Number 7, the Harley guy. Even at sport bike only nights, there's always one random Harley sitting in the lot. He'll roll up on some big old bagger fresh out of the shop with its new Stage 4 Screamin' Eagle 131 big bore kit on his brand new Road Glide Special. If he's wearing a helmet, it's always some cheap looking half helmet he picked up off of Amazon. He's definitely got a Harley Davidson do-rag on, and chances are his wallet also says Harley on it. He probably financed the whole outfit when he bought the bike, but that's okay, because you see, it was 0 down and 0 payments for 90 days, but what he won't tell you is that his interest rate is 13%. He'll talk a big game about how it's putting down some serious torque and how you should totally take it out for a rip one of these days, but take solace in the fact that he's poured the equivalent of a down payment for a house into his ride, and he still can't outrun a 1999 SV650. Fact: Rhode Island is the smallest state with the longest name. The official name used on all state documents is Rhode Island and Providence Plantations.
Hey there, partner, you done made it to the end of this here Yammie Noob video, but I tell you what, there's another Yammie Noob video right over here waiting for you. Now, I know I'm real gracious like that, and I just do nice things for you, so why don't you take a look at this video, and you let me know what you think.